Hello, and welcome to this session on content repurposing. I'm Jade Staiano. I'm Digital Skills Program Manager at Media Trust, and I'll be your host for this session. This session will really hopefully help you plan your big pieces of content and give you practical ways of repurposing it easily and effectively. The speaker for this session is James Berg, founder of Pickaroons. James is a content and communications consultant. His experience as a digital insights expert and content strategist has led him to working with the likes of Facebook, IBM, Philips, Samsung, Sayat, Booking.com, GSK, ESPN, Bupa, and P&G. And his book, 104 Social Media Content Ideas to Increase Sales, has helped over 3,000 businesses plan and implement their social media marketing. As a sought-after speaker, James has educated over 2,000 SMEs, startups, and charities on how to increase their sales, donations, and leads online. If you have any questions for James throughout his presentation, post these in the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen. And with that, I hope you enjoy this session. I'd like to hand over to James.
And Jade, I'm just going to share my screen so you can all see the slides. Jade, could you confirm for me you can see the screen, that my audio is all good, just to make sure before we carry on for everyone?
Yes, we can. Looks great, James.
Lovely. So Jade, thank you very much for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a great day. Hope you're enjoying the session so far. Welcome to my session on repurposing content. As Jade said, thank you very much for that introduction, Jade. But my main thing I do is I run a company called Pickaroons, and we are a content creation agency built on pirate principles. I won't bore you on what those pirate principles are today, but at its core, we know pirates weren't saints, but they broke the rules and came up with better ways of doing things. As a result, creating things like fair pay, injury compensation. And what we've tried to do at Pickaroons, and I try to do with all of my trainings, is break the rules of using social media, using content creation to increase your likes, to increase your followers. My main focus is always on trying to help you increase your sales, donations, or leads, helping the business. I'd prefer you had 100 followers and 99 of them want to buy from you, donate to you, visit your organization, as opposed to having thousands and thousands and none of them are attending. So throughout my crew of creatives, where we create things like animations, video, photography, websites, these are some brands that my crew have worked on. The reason I'm showing you this is because, as you can see, there's a real mix of brands we've worked. And that's where we try and take learnings. And what I'm going to teach you today isn't going to be about things that drag and drop, here's what we did with other heritage organizations or charities or things similar. This is going to be more about, as industry best standard, what you can take and what you can learn. So hopefully that will help you today understand that if I show you any examples, you won't be thinking, that's not what I do, that's not relevant for me. But instead, you'll be able to understand it's more of a mindset shift that I'd like you to be doing, so that straight away you can start creating content in the way that some of the organizations, the industries do. So for today, what we're going to be taking through is a bit of an introduction, some of the challenges, some of the things that happen to stop us creating more content and creating it in a better way. The basics of repurposing, teach you some of those basics. Mindset shifts, I want to change some of your mindset to the way that you create content in a way that's going to help you. Then we're going to go through some formats and repurposing, some examples. After that, we'll show you what some other organizations have done. We're going to finish with a checklist, and then we're going to have 10 minutes at the end for questions. So throughout this session, I won't be looking at the chat box. Jay will be letting me know if there's anything in the meantime that you don't quite understand. Please do put that in there if anything I say is not fully clear. But otherwise, please save those questions for the end, and we'll have 10 minutes to answer through them all. So let's start with the main thing of why. What's the reason for being here? Why are we on this session, and why should we repurpose content? So for me, my outcome is to teach you how to create effective content that will appeal to your target audience. But I want to help you do it in the most efficient way. When you see big organizations putting out loads of social media content, blogs on their website every week, I always try and remind people that they have teams of people. They have agencies they outsource to. So what I want to help you do today is, without knowing each of your organizations, how big you are, what resource it is, I want to help you be able to think this is an efficient way that we can create content. And I'm going to show you a few different examples and things today. I'd like to make it clear now, don't feel like you have to do all of it. I don't want you to feel overwhelmed with James has given us 20 new ideas. We've got to do them all. If you can just take one thing away from today, one big idea, and go and action that with your team, that would be a good outcome for me, and I hope so for you. Just to say as well, this session's recorded. We'll be sharing these slides as well afterwards, so you can use these in the future and go back with your team to create this content. So these are the 4 main challenges that we normally find. Please do drop in the chat box as well if there's any other challenges that you've got. Maybe some others will resonate with them. But these are the 4 main challenges we find that people have with creating content, whether that's social media, website. These are the 4 main things. So the first one is unsure why they should be doing it, what they should be posting, and how. I know for many of you, there's so many interesting things happening at your location, at your organization. So sometimes it's about going, we've got all these things to say, which ones do we do? And when we want to do them, how do we go about doing it? The next one is time consuming. I know we're not in a crowd, but hands up or thumbs up for who would like some more time, because I certainly would. It's finding that time to create social media, to create website, to create blogs, reports, resources. That time is very difficult for us to find, especially, as I said, when we don't have a marketing big team or we've got a million other things on our plate. We've also got the risk, and there's 2 sides to that risk. There's one, the risk of being annoying. Many people are worried about posting too much on social media. They think, oh, what if I annoy the audience? What I always say to that is, remember, no one cares about you. It's 300 feet of content we scroll through on average every single day, which is the same size as the Statue of Liberty. So if people don't like your post, all they're going to do is keep scrolling. I know because of the nature of what you will do, you won't be putting out anything too offensive to make people get angry, but don't worry about coming across as annoying, because you'll either put out content that they like and they'll notice, or they'll just scroll on by. The other side to the risk is legally. What are you legally allowed to say and not? One of my first clients was called Behind Bras, and it was for women in prison, training them in fashion and textiles, so when they leave prison, they can move into employment. So for them, we didn't want to share the women's identity because that could affect their job prospects. I work with a few homeless organizations. For them, we didn't want to share the backstory. We didn't want to share the backstory of these people we were helping. So when it comes to the risk, it's as much about knowing what you don't post, writing guidelines for we don't say this, as it is for what you do. So we had clear guidelines in place that stop that. So for any of you, if you're thinking, oh, we can't show this type of person, or here's what we can't do, write that down and make that clear as part of your social media plan. And the final one is not seeing results, creating that content, putting things out there and just not seeing the results. So hopefully what we're going to cover today is going to help you with some ideas for that. So when it comes to repurposing content, the basics of it. So the dictionary definition of repurpose is to adapt for use in a different purpose. It's taking one thing that already exists and adapting its use, tweaking it and changing it. So now I'm going to tell you about the Christmas turkey. So at Christmas, this is my big theory related, and sorry if anyone's really hungry right now. I have a lot of theories related to food that help explain the way we create content. So at Christmas, if you are serving the turkey, and forgive me if anyone's vegan and doesn't have turkey, that's whatever other meal we have, the big meal we create, we'll create that. We'll put all this effort into making that big meal, all the time, everything that goes into it, served on this one day, a big Christmas turkey. But then what happens over the next few days, or normally it lasts 1 or 2 days in my house, but a few days longer in some other houses, is that is chopped down to become sandwiches, to become salads, to become soups. And as I said, if it's not turkey you have at Christmas, whatever it is you have, I'm sure there's many leftovers that get used as sandwiches, salads, and soups. So you put all the effort into creating this one big thing, and then you strip it down. Another analogy is big rock. You get one big rock and you smash it down and it creates loads of smaller rocks. And that to me is what repurposing is. So what you focus on doing is you're focused on creating pillar content, create that Christmas turkey, that big rock. Then from that, you break that down to smaller pieces of content that came out of that pillar content. It might be a short image. It might be a quote. It might be a graphic. It might be a statistic you used in a report you created. Take that statistic out and now post it as a standalone piece of content So what you've done is you repurposed that big piece of content and made it into smaller. Why would we bother doing this? What's the reasons to? The first one is it distributes the content. I don't know if any of you have ever I put loads of effort before into a blog post. I've put it out. This is definitely going to pop. Everyone's going to read this. I know this is going to be great. Get some likes, get some engagement, but then nothing more. But remember what I said about no one cares about you? How would they remember? How would they remember you've got that thing if you're not repeating it? And back to our thing about not wanting to be annoying, if you're posting, read my blog, read my blog, read my blog, read my blog, with the cover of the blog again and again and again, you're just repeating your message. Whereas if you go, here's an interesting statistic related to why it's important to spend more time outside. For more information, you can read our blog here. Here's a photo recently taken at one of our parks. You can find more of the photos on our blog here. Here's a short video clip taken from a podcast we created. You can listen to the full podcast here. So what you're doing is it's helping you take one piece and create it more and take it across different channels. It might be a full video on YouTube. It might be a short clip on Facebook, on Instagram. Another reason is it meets the audience's needs. Not everyone likes to consume the same content. I prefer to read. Many others prefer to watch video. Some others like quick, short snippets of information. So by you taking one big piece of pillar and creating it as small little bits of information, you meet the audience's needs of repurposing things and giving them the content formats they'd like. It maintains publishing frequency. Similar to the first point that I said, it means that you've got something to do every week or every month. We do a lot of about us videos at Pickeroons. We'll create about us videos for clients. And let's say that's 2 minutes long. We will then turn that into, we'll make 10 or 15 second short clips from that video. So we turn around to our clients, say, okay, every 2 weeks, we would like you to post one of these 15-second clips with a go to our website to watch the full video. If that's 15 small clips, and that's every 2 weeks, it's 30 weeks worth. That means you can post that stuff out and it gives you that frequency. It maintains publishing, which means you're not thinking, oh, what ideas have we got to think up this week? Because you know you've got that content already going. This is a big one for me. It removes stress in creating new content. It removes the need for you to go, as I just said there, oh, we haven't had anything post out recently. What are we going to do? It means you focus on that one big piece of content, you strip it down, and now you've got that exists. It removes that stress. It boosts your SEO, your visibility. It means that when people are searching for your organization, if you put a blog post out and that's got certain keywords related to what it is you do, that might go out once, which now means you'll be searched once and it might get you in front of people. Whereas if you've got that blog post and then that's also posted on your social media a few times with the same keyword, and you take that blog post and make a podcast from it, what you're now doing is you're getting yourself more out there with those key terms. So the mindset shift I love this quote from Abraham Lincoln of, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. I would rather you spend more time planning what that big content is going to be, that pillar, and then you can strip that down, than feeling like you always need to be creating content. And hopefully what I'll help you with today is some of that mindset of focusing on creating that pillar. So let's say now we're starting to come towards the end of the year. If you're thinking this is all great, but I definitely don't have time for this, maybe set yourself a deadline. Say by the beginning of January, we are going to create a pillar piece of content. We're going to cover more in the rest of this session what some of those pillar pieces could be, but might say by beginning of January, we're going to do that, which now gives you the next few months to not even worry so much about your social media. We haven't posted on Pickeroons now for about 4 or 5 months on our Instagram feed because we have enough good content there that our page looks like a nice shop window. When people arrive on the page, they'll get an idea of who we are. But we're currently working on big ideas for moving forwards. And I'd rather we have this break now to work on those ideas than try and create content in the meantime, which takes us away from creating that pillar. So I hope that helps in terms of a mindset shift. Another model I like to show you is Hero, Hub, and Help. This is a model from Google and it's about content you create. So hero content is high impact. It gets you out there. People notice you. This is TV adverts, brand films, new product launches. Some organizations call this their Super Bowl moments. These normally are big, everyone will notice you and it will get that awareness for your organization out there. Hub content is ongoing content that encourages interaction and engagement. That might be videos, resources, blogs, podcasts. They take a bit more work, but they're going to get you out there and it's ongoing. People come to know you as someone that regularly delivers high value blogs or high value resources. And help. This is always on content that's very shareable, optimized for search, very short, like snippets of information. It might be a statistic, a quote, a day-to-day behind the scenes of your organization. So now I want to show you the difference in all of these. Hero is big budgets, big agencies. You need big things, a lot of resource and time to go into it. These are your big campaigns. Hub, a bit of time needed, but it's accessible. And as I said, I don't want to say no one here is able to do the hero content, but it's more that Hub, when you've got smaller teams, smaller budgets, this is something that's a little bit more accessible and it's something we can create in a bit of an easier way. And then help. Most small businesses and charities spend all their time here, just sharing small pieces of content, looking up at the hero, going, oh, one day we'd love to do that. And also sometimes looking at the hub, going, when we've got more time, when we've got more resource, we will do that. When it comes to our content, when we talk about our Christmas turkey, that's the hub content. That's where it takes a bit more time, but we can create something, the video series, the resources, which will be high value, it is accessible. And then as a result, from creating that hub content, you then create that snackable content that goes into the help. So as I said, once you've got big grants, big budgets, big campaigns, focus on the hero. But what a lot of organizations might do is focus on the hero. And then when you arrive on their page, there's none of this other content there. So I don't know who you are or about you. Whereas this is the content that will keep you there constantly present. And when it comes to repurposing content, this is how you can focus on the Christmas turkey and then strip that down. Now I'll move on from this slide just in case it's making anyone too hungry. So evergreen content. This is another mindset shift. This is something I'd like you to think about. So evergreen content, I don't know if anyone's aware of the evergreen tree. It's named so because it's evergreen. It stays green all year round, no matter what the seasons. So when it comes to content, I'd like you to think of the same thing. When you're putting all that effort into creating content, create content that isn't going to run out of a date. How to, something relevant to your audience. Best books to read for, relevant to your audience. A guide on something relevant. So does this make, I hope this makes sense of how to, best books, a guide on. These things won't change over time. Reasons why you should be in nature, tips to creating art, 20 things you didn't know about a certain topic. These things last. As Jade introduced my book earlier, 104 social media content ideas to increase sales. That stands the test of time. Now, even though the platforms are slightly changing, there's a few wordings in the book that might need updating. The concept of here is a load of ideas you can use lasts. And I did that on purpose because I knew I wouldn't have time to write the next version, the next version. So if you can create a piece of content, or a podcast, a resource, whatever that is, that stays evergreen, then what that will mean is you don't have to then make something new. You've now got that, it exists, and it can last you years and years and years. So some example of things that aren't evergreen, it could be presidential elections, could be Women's March 2020 highlights, Olympics, it's specific news that's happening there and then. So think about that of, if you would say, here's a summary of what's happened for us this year, here's our year summary video, that's only relevant for that year. Whereas if you said, here's an about us video, that will last for a lot longer. So think about that when it comes to evergreen and not evergreen content, and that will help you use your resource and time in a more efficient way as well. The curse of knowledge is something to be aware of. I'm sorry to tell you, I think many of you are probably cursed, and that is the nature of, you know so much about what it is you do, you can't comprehend how little others know about that. So that's something which I've definitely been a victim of the curse for a long time, where I'd have certain advice. I thought, oh, I've got all these big strategic ideas and thoughts. But actually, some of the questions I get the most is, what's the best time to post on social media? What's the best channels to use? So I knew so much about this topic area, I couldn't comprehend how little others knew. And I was always trying to put out this high level smart content. Actually, sometimes it's the simple things to you are massive advice to others. So please keep that in mind as well, of when you're creating this content, it hasn't always got to be, don't think, oh, everyone knows this. Maybe a lot of people in your industry know it, but your target audience won't. So keep that in mind for some of the simple ideas you can create. So back to the evergreen, how to, best books to read for and a guide on, and not evergreen, presidential elections, Women's March, Olympics, those type of things. I want you to start thinking of what's evergreen, what's not, and whether you're writing a few of them down now or after this session, please just write down a list of as many of these as you can. The key to coming up with good ideas is just to write as many down as you can and then strip them back to the best ones. So start thinking about evergreen content. And if you're struggling for some of those topics, some ways to find the evergreen topics. So what are the frequently asked questions? What are the things that your audience, that people who attend your location, your customers, your partners, what do they normally ask you? Now answer them. Write those down. Here's the questions we get asked a lot. Now here's how we'll answer them. There's a website called answerthepublic.com where you can put in a specific term and it will show you the things people are Googling. BuzzSumo also shows you certain topic areas related to what you do. Quora is a really nice website where people are looking for advice on how-tos. Do keyword research. So you could go on YouTube, search how to or something related to what you do, and you can see what are people making videos of, what are people saying in the comments. Speak to your target audiences. Ask them whether it's a focus group, whether it's a questionnaire, like what content could we create that would help you? What would help you? Remember, always do that. Give value to the audience. And if there's any others, please put them in the chat box, because then might share some ideas for some others, spark some of those thoughts. So now we'll get into the formats and repurposing. I've been speaking a lot about the mindset. I hope this has helped so far, but now we'll really speak about what are some of those formats and how can you repurpose it. Very easy drag and drop. And as I mentioned before, I don't expect you to be doing all of these. Please do just choose the ones that work. Or as we said, this session's recorded. You'll be receiving this as a resource. So then you can go back to this in the future and use this. So we'll start with video. Video is very high value. And I've got some visuals here of how you can create that. You can create video on Zoom. As I said, I'm not going to bore you too much about pirates, but we are creating a podcast with a real life pirate. I created that on Zoom with him. We interviewed him over Zoom. That's high enough quality. Your phones as well have very high quality now. You can look on Premiere Pro. I believe Adobe have a free or a discounted software for charities. If not, if you've got a MacBook, you can use iMovie on it, or there's an organization called Lightworks, which is also a free tool you can use if you're on other laptops. And I'd always recommend trying to get a microphone if you can for video. You can just by searching microphone or lapel mic on Amazon. I always recommend the Rode microphones, but you can find those for under 70, 80 pounds, and that just adds that quality. The visuals on phones now are so high that the sound is something you really want to be getting there right. And now once you've created that video, it might be an about us video, it might be 20 tips, it might be an interview of some of your staff. What you can then do is you can break that video down to these smaller pieces of content. So you might have a video which is an about us where you've got 10 testimonials from people who've been through your organization. Well, now you can take those testimonials and make them into short video clips. You could also make those testimonials into graphic quotes. There's a tool called Canva, C-A-N-V-A. It's a very nice graphic design tool if you haven't heard of it before, where you can make free graphic designs. You've also got statistics. Maybe you mention a statistic in your video, turn that into a graphic or take that into a clip. You might have certain images used for the video, use those. And then short video clips as well. That's a nice way to create that. If there's any others, please do drop them in the chat as well. Always open to more ideas, and there's some things I haven't thought of, then hopefully it'll help some others here too. Reports or white papers, maybe create a report into the topic area of what it is you do. I always recommend a tool called Grammarly. Again, I think they have a free version for charities, and that will help with if you're like me, not the best with grammar, that will check your grammar, it will tick it off for you. You've got Word, you've got PowerPoint. If you wanted to create something a little bit more visual, on Canva and on MacBooks as well. You've got Keynote. They're tools where you can create nice visuals, but create a report or a white paper into the topic area of what you do. And you can break that down to so many types of content. You could do a webinar presenting your findings or interviewing someone you've done it with. You can take each section and maybe make one of the sections free or post that. Take the key takeaways. Take the key takeaways. Cake on my mind again. Take the key takeaways and make that into a blog post. Make a blog post that breaks down, here's the things. For the full report, download it here. And what I'll say is key, and this is another presentation that I do, but I'd like you to remember this, of 90% interest, 10% sales. So if you've got a report, a white paper, any of these types of content, 90% of that is going to be interesting, high value to your audience. So please don't be worried about selling with the other 10%. Putting in there, if you'd like to come attend our location, if you'd like to come to one of our trainings, if you're interested in, then please go into there and put a call to action at the bottom. Podcast, you could take those findings from the report and do a podcast, especially if you've worked with someone else to do that, you can interview them. Quotes, go through the quotes and take those. Is there someone you interviewed? Is there a little soundbite? Can you take that and put that elsewhere? Are there any images you used? Again, statistics, interviews, and again, please do, if you've got any other thoughts, put them in there. A blog post, I mentioned these quite a bit. Again, write this. There's nice tools you can put this on. Grammarly, again, will help you with that spell check. And also, speak to other people in your team. I have a few friends, not even in my team actually, I have a few friends that I know are very, very good at writing. So whenever we write a blog, I'll send that to them and say, what do you think? Can you spell check and sense check it for me? What you can then take a blog down, you can turn it into an infographic. Infographic is like a big graphic with loads of bits of information in it. Again, you can take statistics from it, a section teaser, a quote, an image. If there's any others, please do drop them in. But these are some ways that you can take one blog at Christmas turkey and chop it down into other pieces of content. Podcast is very high value, and I would like you to assume no one's going to listen to your podcast. That will help you have more confidence in when you present it. I'd like you to be doing as many as you can, because once you're doing them, when eventually you become more successful or the organization gets more attention on it, you will be more used to that. I've got a couple of podcasts. When I first started, I was shaking. I wasn't answering the questions properly. I wasn't used to speaking. But by doing that practice, it meant that I was able to explain things and I got more and more used to it. And I'm so thankful that I did it at the point where hardly anyone was watching it, because that gave me the confidence to try things, so that once we got more people watching it, I'd increase my skill set. So as I said before, you can create video on Zoom, on your phone. You can use GarageBand on an MacBook to edit it. There's an app called website called Audacity, which is like a free podcast editor. And when it comes to these podcasts, you could be interviewing people from your industry. You could be interviewing guests. You could be interviewing people who you partner with, people who attend, people who work for you. A really nice one to do that I always recommend to small organizations is just do like a staff roundup, like a 20-minute podcast once a month where the staff discusses what's happened the last month. And again, remember, no one cares about you. So assume when you post it, no one's going to listen or watch. But what it does is it just keeps you present in the mind of your audience, because they'll see you've got the podcast. And back to our evergreen content, I've got a podcast where I interview my dad called Chats with Dad. First season of that didn't do that well, didn't have a lot of people listen. The second season has done very, very well. But now what's happened is we've got loads of listeners on the second season who are new listeners, who are then going back and seeing we've got this whole first season for them to listen to as well. So with these podcasts, remember, these things, these topics, make them evergreen. So maybe make them, it's a tips podcast where your organization shares tips related to how people can do something related to what you do. Make those evergreen topics. Podcasts, you can take it down to testimonials. Are there any testimonials featured in it, or that people write about the podcast? Sound bites, take little teaser sound bites. Short video clips, if it's a video podcast, not just an audio. So obviously you can record on your phone just the audio. Are there images? Is it, whether it's a studio, whether it's a certain location you're recording it, just get a nice image of everyone involved. Or it might even be a screenshot on Zoom that you can say, we're working on this podcast today. It's going to be out next week. Infographic, as I said before, those kind of big graphics with loads of information on them. Some nice tools you can use for this are Infogram and Canva. I believe Canva is free. I believe the pro version of Canva, they also have a discount or are free for charities. So please do have a look at that. And for an infographic, imagine it's loads of a statistic there, a quote there, a did you know here. It's a sort of visualization with loads of information. You just take each of those and break those down. Infographics, one of my favorite things to focus on making to then repurpose, because you've got loads of graphics in one page that now just become standalone graphics, statistics, quotes. And again, if there's any others throughout this, please do drop them in the chat. It will just help others with some ideas. An ebook. You don't just have to, well, this I suppose works for an ebook or a book, but we're thinking specifically on the content side of things, something people can download. Create an ebook, as with reports. This could be PowerPoint, on Canva, on Keynote. What you can then do is create that ebook, create something of value, and then you can take that down to testimonials. You can offer out chapters for free. Again, the key takeaways, the blog post, webinars. You can do a webinar talking about it, quotes. You can do a podcast about the ebook. So I know I'm sort of repeating myself now in some of these, and you're thinking, yep, James, we've heard that tactic for another content type. And that's kind of the point. The point is that if you get in the habit of repurposing, you'll start seeing all these different big rocks you can create that you break down. So you'll go, oh, we're going to do a podcast. But instead of just going, we'll do a podcast, you're straight away thinking about how that can be edited down to smaller pieces of information. I've just finished working with a really talented documentary director, and we've tried to get him in the habit of, when he is editing his documentary, when he's doing all that work, he also has to have a separate file open which says images, and a separate file open which says trailer clips, and a separate file which says short, interesting clips. So as he's editing this big, amazing thing, he's then moving small bits of content over to these relevant files. So when we go, right, what content have we got to create? He's already done the work when he's been preparing. So I hope that makes sense in terms of why you're seeing some of these again and again. It's because once you get in that mindset of repurposing, the possibilities, there's just so many. I'm going to show you some examples now that were shared with me. So this first one is from Sorting Britain, the power of postcodes. And what they did was they had this video, and thank you again, Jade. It was Jade that shared these with me. And then they broke this down to social content, to the postcode elephant, to images, to visuals. So they took one big video, one big campaign, and they broke it down to smaller pieces of content. Then this next one, we've got this light spectacular on the North Yorkshire Moors Railway. Had this amazing thing. And this is also taking the idea of offline. So sometimes it's an offline thing you're doing, which I know for many of you, you're doing amazing things in the offline space. Feel very lucky, because when I work with organizations such as yourselves, it's interesting because you've got interesting things to say. There's a lot of organizations, when I've worked with big brands, where they're trying to make things that aren't that interesting sound interesting. They've always got to come up with amazing ways to sell them. Whereas for all of you, I know there's so many interesting things happening at your location, at your organization, with the people you're training and supporting, that you've almost got this wealth of content. So when you do big campaigns like this, think about as well, okay, this is happening in an offline scenario. We'll make a video summary about it. And from that video, we'll break this down to images, to testimonials, to things that we can put out to try and get people there. So you can see here, they've created carousels, images, blog summaries. So it's a really nice way to get people connected, and you're always driving them back to go see here for more information. And then at Alnwick Castle, they have a whole blog, a whole part of their page where they're talking about film and media inquiries, how the films, TV shows, dramas that have been put on there. That's something on the website that's obviously targeted towards them, but they've done some amazing content where they've broken it down to say, here's some location scouting, here's what goes on behind the scenes. So again, you can take that big offering you've got and break it down to smaller pieces of information. So now if we go through a checklist, we've got a little bit of time left, and then we'll go into some questions. So the checklist to help you repurpose content properly. First one, identify which content type you have the knowledge and the skills to create. As I said at the beginning, my style is not to come in and say, here's everything you have to do. Good night, God bless, off you go. I want you to take from this is a lot of ideas, and I'd like you to look at one. Just pick one right now. If you can do more, amazing. But pick one of these and go, we're going to focus on creating that. And then from that, we'll repurpose. And once you've got the knowledge and skills for that, maybe you're going to hire someone in the future that will help you with the next phase of it. But focus on one right now and identify which of those you have the knowledge, the skills, and the confidence. I'm going to say now, when it comes to video, none of us like being on video. All of us hate the sound of our voice. None of us want to do it. But by doing it, it's one of the most high value pieces of content you can do, and it will help your organization in unbelievable ways. So I'd really say, try and overcome that fear for video if that's what's stopping you. But again, I'd rather you do what you feel comfortable with, what you know you've got the knowledge and skills to create. Then you're going to identify what topics you'll cover based on who your audience is. So now we know we're going to do a podcast, or we're going to do blogs, or we're going to do video. What's going to be covered in that? And base that on who your audience is. What are they looking for? What's their challenge? What's their need? Create the content that you know will be interesting to them. Once you've got that, create a how plan for what you're going to create, who's going to create it, and when. Is it you're going to do a podcast, and on the last Friday of every month, you're going to put time in the diary for all your team to sit down and record the podcast? Who's going to be in charge of it? Who's going to be the one doing the recording? Who's going to be the one doing the editing? As you do with other parts of the business, for many organizations, because we all use social media in our day-to-day, many people view social media as something that in the business, they do it in the same way. I'd much prefer you focus as you would your finance tasks, your business meetings. Diarize it, create a plan and the responsibilities for who does what. When it comes to the blogs, something I've recommended to a lot of organizations before is try and get as many of your staff or people writing blogs and give them a deadline. So you could say now, again, with the timing we've got, by the beginning of January, send it out to all your team, say, I would like you all to share a blog post with me. That's your deadline. I need that, because then if you've got, let's say, 5 members of staff, that could be 5 blogs that will then see you through the first 5 months of next year. So try and identify who's going to lead on it, when are you going to get it done by, and how are you going to create that. Then you create the content, the fun bit. Make that content, approve it, create the podcast, create the blog, create the report, create whatever it is you're going to do, and then have that approval so you have people to check in with to see if it works or not. Then what you do, once you've got that big rock, that Christmas turkey, you break that down into smaller chunks. So once you've created that, again, as before, you have a process for how do we do that, but you take it and you strip it right down. So that might be like the documentary director that I said about, that you're almost breaking it down while you're creating it. Or it might be that you go, nope, we're not going to do that, James, doesn't work for us. So right now, we're just going to focus all our effort on creating the content. And then once it's created, we will put some time in the diary to go through it myself or as a team or with friends or family and go, right, where can we take this one piece of content and break it down into smaller chunks? Then schedule the content to go out regularly. If you're not already using a scheduling tool, I definitely recommend it. Check out Buffer, Hootsuite. Facebook has a free scheduling on it as well. We can schedule to Facebook and Instagram. Schedule that. So now you've got all of your sound bites or your snippets or your images, your statistics. You can go, right, once every week, once every 2 weeks, we're going to publish one of these. Point back to the main content. Use links. So whether it's go to the link in our bio to read the full blog if it's on something like Instagram, or there's on other platforms, read the full post here, listen to the podcast here. You're like an ecosystem where you're driving people towards it. Over time, use things like Google Analytics or social media page analytics to see what's working best or isn't working. Give yourself at least 6 months. It takes time for these things to work. There's so many factors that go into whether people engage or not. So give it time and see what works and what doesn't. And now what I'd like to know before I jump back onto the main page and we'll jump into the chat box, we'll answer some questions, is what are you going to create? Off the back of today, please just put something in the chat box, what you're going to create, what the topics are, what the post is. Hopefully by you doing that as well, that might inspire some other people. So please do share. And now we're going to go into questions. So I'm going to jump back in. thank you very, very much. I hope this has been useful for you. And now we'll do some questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
James, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for all that insight. Lots and lots
No
of
worries.
gems in there. We have got quite a few questions. The first one I want to ask is from Carlos, who has asked, where do we start, basically? You know, if you can only do one, you've said resources are tight, budget is tight, time is tight. If you had your choice of like podcast, video, infographic, social media campaign, what would you suggest people start with?
That's a very good question, Carson. I think it's a tough one because I don't know enough about what it is your organization do. So as I said at the end there, it's what works best for you. What's your skill set? If you're very good at writing, a blog is very easy to do. If you're comfortable to explain what it is you do, a video is very easy to do. I think things like books, let's say that's going to always take a bit more effort. So let's say what we'll call the easiest ones, dependent on your skill set: blogs, video about us, and podcast, Zoom. I'd say those three are the easiest ones to create. A bit of a cheat tip as well for all of you is when it comes to these things like the infographics or the reports, many people might already have those out there. For Behind Bras, we created a whole report, and all we did was read maybe 20 Ministry of Justice reports that had loads of statistics and information, and we just lifted that and put it into something else. So I'd say blogs, podcasts, and videos are the easiest ones to create. But otherwise, I wouldn't want to say without knowing what your skill sets are. So I hope that helps.
That's great. Thanks, James. And you mentioned a little bit at the end there about touching on analytics, about what's working best. Are there any other ways that you would measure, you know, the time you're putting in, you're getting something back from it?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of the effectiveness of your organization. So are you seeing more people through the door? Are you able to, is there a way that when people attend, you're able to say, where did you hear about us? Are you following us on social media? I think a big thing for me is, are you having more offline success? I'd want to know what I really enjoy with social media is when I'll be in the pub or I'll be out with friends and a friend of a friend who's never liked or commented on any of my posts says, oh, I saw that thing you did. That's really useful. So I would say all of this is about looking at what's the success of your organization. And as we said at the beginning, finding a feedback loop. Are you noticing, if you're not just using analytics, are you noticing more positive comments? Are you noticing more of your staff are wanting to get involved in creating content? Are you noticing more people through the door that month? So try and see those type of things as well, if that helps.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And Anthony has asked a question about podcasts and events. I think you've covered podcasts really, but with events where we're kind of set in a half-term event or a summer holiday event or something like that, how do you feed that into this kind of evergreen model?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think it's about, it's how do you make it relevant? So the evergreen, don't use evergreen as the only type of content you can create. You can create, here's a summary of that halftime event, and we've broken that down to smaller pieces. But then what I would do if I was you is I would then use that to then create a video that you're going to use to promote next year's event. So it's maybe about, it's the content you create is here's the summary of it, but then you can repurpose that content to use it for another big piece of content that will promote the next one. And then eventually what you've got is almost like a show reel of here's the half-term events we run. Please book in for the next one here. So I hope that helps in terms of those one-off events. And yeah, evergreen was more about that will help you as a mindset, but don't only limit yourself to that. If you go, do you know what? We've got some really knowledgeable people about what's currently happening related to something with politics related to what we're doing. Do not do that. It's just evergreen is something that will last for longer. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Vicky's asked about what are your thoughts about monetizing or charging for content that's kind of previously been free, or maybe you're releasing a series. Have you got any thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for that. It's all about your funnel. So it's where and when do you want to charge? So yes, if you think something's high value enough, charge for it. But then the repurposing part are the free parts. So you might give out a free chapter of a book you've created, which is a really nice way. So look, here's a free chapter. Please sign up for this. Please download it. And at the end of that free chapter, remember my 90% interest, 10% sales. To purchase the full book, go here. So I think that's again about what's your sales funnel? How much do you think that will lead to the other part? So are you going to go, actually, yeah, we want to monetize this book we've got because we've got this amazing knowledge, or are you using the book to drive people to your event? So I think, yeah, things like books, podcasts, I wouldn't think about monetizing. But again, it's all about access, because you go, we've got a podcast where we interviewed David Attenborough and we've got the best tips you've ever heard. It's the value you think is there. So I hope that helps. But again, for that, the repurposing is giving out free aspects of that thing that you monetize.
It's a great tip. Yeah, using those different formats that you've got. And a question as well about what content is best to attract younger audiences. I know you recently did something for Heritage Digital on younger audiences.
Yes.
So what are your top tips on what kind of content should organizations be focusing on?
Well, I mean, tip one, if that presentation as well is available for everyone, I'd say if you can go watch that, that will help. Yeah, I did a whole session on engaging youth audiences. I think the key is to make things that they will enjoy and want to engage with. So it's giving them, my main concept of that presentation was handing the reins over to them. So it's not even about you making the content, but about you saying, hey, we'd like you to come down for a day and take over our Instagram story or take over our TikTok. So it actually, in a way, it's about giving it to them. But also, if you're not going to do that, for them, the key thing is experiences. So if you can use a generated content, if you've got a specific area or a service, maybe if it's something to do with art, you show off the art of people who attended that day, or you take photos of them. So you put them in the content, which as a result, you're then putting them out to their audience. Or you have a certain location where when you're doing a certain tour, you say, right, everyone take a picture here. This is the best spot for a picture. You give them the opportunity to create the content for you. So that's the best thing you can do for youth audiences, is kind of make it fun, but give them the opportunity to come and have an experience. So I hope that helps as the shortest answer of that. But otherwise, yeah, there's a whole resource or workship, I think, that you can watch from that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. And somebody else, Neville, has asked about how do you publish a podcast in a sentence or two. Can you say how you can get started?
Yeah, so I think the easiest is you can just put it on YouTube, then it's there. The second one, there's a website called Buzzsprout. That's what we use for our podcasts, and you put it on there, and then it automatically publishes it to everywhere, to Spotify, Apple, Google, all the different podcasts. I think it's maybe, I want to say it's 10 or 11 pounds a month. Actually, no, it's maybe a bit less, but $10 or $11, like £8 or £9 a month. But otherwise, it's just the thing as well for me is with all of these things, like when I say get going, of by creating it, you'll just only find better ways of doing it. You'll meet other people that go, oh, I saw your podcast you're doing. Where do you put it on? And you'll say, oh, I put it on here. And they'll go, oh, there's a better software you can use here. So I think that's why I'm such a big fan of just get going at its bare minimum. Just put it on YouTube. Otherwise, check out Buzzsprout. And then over time, you'll find ways to make better covers, better snippets. I see Rob just said he's used Libsyn for podcast too. Rob, thank you very much for sharing. Yeah, and anyone else, if you've got any other recommendations, they're all quite good. But yeah, just at bare minimum, get onto YouTube. Up and down how much you pay each month, depending on how much content. Oh, nice. So yeah, so check that one out as well. There's loads of tools, and that's the thing. There's always new tools. They're always trying to look at different offerings. But yeah, so I hope that helps, and thank you, Rob, for that input as well.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's it for questions now. So James, just a huge thank you. My biggest takeaway is podcast like no one's listening. It's like dance like no one's watching, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Assume no one's listening. Say your content, assume no one cares. If it's really good, they're going to notice. If it's not really good, they will ignore it. If it's really terrible, by doing those things we said, having that feedback loop, having friends, having people in the organization, someone will let you know if it's that terrible. But otherwise, just keep getting it out there, keep drip feeding what it is you do and making yourself present.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And thank you
to
everyone.
No worries.
And to all the chat and the Q&A. It's really lovely to see a lively conference. Don't forget, you can rate this session by using the star system below this screen. And if you'd like to look back over any of the content from this session, it will be available on demand on this platform within 24 hours. and you'll be able to find it within the sessions tab. So we'll see you shortly, 11:40. I'll also be hosting a session on creating a content calendar. So we'll see you back then soon.
Thanks, everyone.